On June 25, 1876, at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, 5 companies of the U.S. 7th Cavalry, under the direct command of George Armstrong Custer, were wiped out. For almost 150 years, the battle has been the source of heated controversy and given rise to a few very ridiculous stories. In his book, Son of the Morning Star, Custer and the Little Bighorn, Evan S. Connell tells us, news of the Little Bighorn calamity was at first discredited. Americans could not believe that Sitting Bull had defeated General Custer. They refused to admit that an uneducated savage could have defeated a West Point graduate. Therefore, such a genius must be a disguised renegade. So it was alleged that a mysterious swarthy youth from the Great Plains, nicknamed Bison, had attended West Point and there absorbed the military science that laid General Custer low. 6 months after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Frederick Whitaker's A Complete Life of General George A. Custer was published. Whitaker was a professional writer of nickel and dime novel fiction for a leading publisher and made full use of his imagination in his book on Custer. Citing an officer of the general staff who examined the ground as his source, Whitaker describes the Custer fight in detail. Custer was driven back from an unsuccessful attempt to cross the stream to successive stands on higher ground. 3/4 of a mile from the river, Lieutenant Calhoun's company is thrown across the line of retreat. Whitaker, who perhaps had the powers of a psychic medium, puts these words into Custer's mouth: "The country needs, I give her a man who will do his duty to the death. I give them Calhoun. I leave my best loved sister a widow, that so the day may be saved." First Lieutenant Calhoun was the husband of Custer's only sister. During the course of 70 years, more than 120 men came forward claiming to be the sole survivor of Custer's last stand. Custer's widow received dozens of letters detailing the horrors of the battle and the writer's lucky escape. There were basically 3 types of stories. 1. The survivor disguised himself as an Indian. 2. The survivor hid inside a scooped-out horse. 3. The survivor was saved by an Indian maiden who instantly fell in love with him. Some of these so-called survivors, such as Arizona Bill Gardner, became minor celebrities. Another fiction writer, Bigelow Neal, who told the Bismarck Tribune on February 22, 1930 that his ambition was to write a novel about Custer, never got farther than attaching a myth to Henry R. Porter, the only surviving doctor of the 7th Cavalry. According to this myth, Dr. Porter, who was attached to Major Reno's command, conducted a battlefield autopsy on George Armstrong Custer's body and concluded that Custer committed suicide. This yarn originated in a letter to the editor published in the winter 1959 issue of Montana, the magazine of Western history. The story runs like this. Dr. Porter told a 14-year-old Bigelow Neal that Colt brought out a new .41 caliber revolver in 1875 and sent 3 to General Terry for evaluation. Terry kept 1 for himself, gave 1 to Custer and gave 1 to Dr. Porter. When Porter examined Custer's body, he opened up the back of Custer's head and extracted a bullet that was an exact match of the bullets of his own experimental Colt. Dr. Porter concluded that Custer killed himself. This story fails on several counts. 1. There is no independent corroboration of the story. This is hearsay evidence from an unverifiable source. 2. Dr. Porter never mentions an autopsy in any official reports, or subsequent writings or interviews. He actually wrote only, "Custer was shot in the head and breast." 3. Colt has no records indicating that such guns were sent to General Terry. 4. The story makes no sense on its own merits. If General Terry really received a new state-of-the-art weapon, is it likely that he would have given it for evaluation to a civilian surgeon serving a 3-month contract with the Army rather than to a seasoned combat officer? The sole proof of this howler is the statement of Bigelow Neal: "I know that Dr. Porter told only the truth." Custer may well have committed suicide, but this unverified story by a fiction author should not be the basis for anyone's decision on that matter. After all, the story of Custer and the Little Bighorn has more than its fair share of stories told by tellers of tall tales.